Let's talk some sleepers for the 2025 fantasy football season. I'm going to throw 5 running backs your way who I'm targeting at their current ADPs. We start down in Miami. Jaylen Wright, an ADP of 185 over the last few weeks over at the NFFC. A true sleeper to me, a guy who was a clear number 2 on his own team, operating, of course, behind a true workhorse running back in Etienne. Now, the Dolphins leaned extremely heavily on Etienne last season, with Tua injured for half the year, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle really not performing up to their standard, whether Tua was out there or not. There were plenty of times where if you're watching a Dolphins game, it felt as though Etienne was the entire offense. That was all well and good for his fantasy value last season, but I think Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins know they need to diversify that running game, diversify that offense. Etienne logged 281 touches a year ago, including 203 carries. Now, he held up injury-wise, but would not necessarily bet on that happening again in 2025. So I expect Jaylen Wright to start the season with a larger role, even as the clear backup. Raheem Mostert, who was second on the team in carries last season, a distant second at that, is now in Vegas. The Dolphins did bring in Ollie Gordon in the 6th round out of Oklahoma State, but I think they want Wright to be the guy behind Etienne. In a backup role, Wright won't necessarily be fantasy viable week to week. We know that, but the reason I like him as a guy you could basically get for free in the 15th or 16th round right now is the possibility of a Etienne injury. Not only would Wright step in as the RB1, but he'd be in position to take over what would likely be a high usage role in an offense that uses its running backs in diverse ways. And we would see him as a pass catcher. We certainly saw that with Etienne last season. In the one extended sample that we saw of Jaylen Wright in 2024, week 5 against New England, he carried 13 times for 86 yards, 6.5 yards per carry. It's a guy who ripped off 6 yards and 7.5 yards per carry in his final 2 years at the college level. And remember, the Dolphins traded up for Jaylen Wright in the 4th round in last year's draft. So it's not a massive investment, but still an investment nonetheless. And I think the front office wants to see a return on that. If I'm taking a later round stab at some running back depth, give me the upside of Jaylen Wright in this offense over someone like, Rico Dowdle, who goes about a round earlier. Before we get to our next sleeper, go check out everything we offer over at RotoWire.com. All of our rankings, projections, betting data. We got a great player prop tool. You can also download the RotoWire Picks and Props app if you prefer it in that form. Been using that to great success all NBA season. If you want to check out any of our content, just go to rotowire.com and make sure you use the promo code YouTube15. YouTube15, that'll get you 15% off any of our RotoWire products. All right, our next sleeper running back, Travis Etienne of the Jacksonville Jaguars. It is not often that I tout any Jacksonville Jaguar. As a Jags fan, I've been just beaten into submission. I know better by this point, but reluctantly, I'm buying in one last time on Travis Etienne, who's going as the RB37 right now in the NFFC. We're talking same range as Javonte Williams, Zach Charbonnet, Ramondre Stevenson, Jordan Mason. I get Tank Bigsby is there. I know the Jags added Bashal Tutin in the draft. Yes, he's an exciting prospect on some level. And sure, Etienne, still somewhat of an injury risk, but to me, he is easily the most talented and well-rounded back of that group. I think he'll be given the first crack at the true RB1 job in Liam Cohen's system during OTAs. Yes, I know it's OTAs. Liam Cohen had nothing but praise for Travis Etienne, essentially implied that he was misused by Doug Peterson the last couple of seasons. And as somebody who watched every single one of those games, I will agree with that statement. Jaguars offense, complete catastrophe last season. No question about it. Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson were never on the same page. Lawrence missed half the season. The Jags just turned into a predictable, low upside, go 3 and out. It felt like every series type of offense, and basically just played out the string over the second half of the season once Mac Jones took over. The Jags were also 26th at PFF in run blocking grade, which even a marginal improvement on that would go a long way. To me, by default, even sight unseen, Liam Cohen brings a renewed sense of optimism and what should be a much sharper scheme to Jacksonville. This is the guy who took the Bucs from literally dead last in the NFL in rushing in 2023 to 4th in 2024. And yeah, certainly Bucky Irving and an improved offensive line played a part in that, but the hope is that Liam Cohen can bring some of that same juice to the Jags offense. Keep in mind, even in a less than ideal setup under Doug Peterson in 2023, Etienne finished as the RB3 in total PPR points, behind only Christian McCaffrey and Breece Hall. That was only 2 seasons ago. He's only 26, a return to that form, which was just over 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns, 58 catches for 475 yards. That, to me, that seems within the realm of possibility. Now, he's not going to carry the ball 267 times like he did in 2023. I think we can say that definitively. Bigsby and to an extent, Bashal Tutin will mix in on early downs, but there's a lot of pass catching upside for Etienne in the Cohen system, which of course saw Irving and Rachaad White combine for nearly 100 catches last season. So I like Etienne more in PPR than I do non-PPR, that's for sure. I don't think he's going to need a massive 2023 level workload to provide a nice return on his ADP. I mean, he's going late enough right now, the RB 37. He's going after guys who are clear backups for other teams. The presence of Bigsby and Tootin, it's somewhat of a concern. Yeah, we'll see how that ultimately shakes out over the next few months, but we're talking 9th, 10th round of a draft. To me, this is a gamble that I am more than willing to take. And Tootin, for what it's worth, by the way, had major fumble issues at the college level, was already scolded publicly by Liam Cohen during OTAs for fumbling on the first day. So I like Travis Etienne to win what I think is really not that much of a battle ultimately in that running back room. Again, if I'm looking for upside at running back later in the draft, sign me up for Travis Etienne. The next running back on our list, we're going to Kansas City, Isiah Pacheco. Look, when I think about the Chiefs running game last season, I'm just picturing all of those 13 for 45, 14 for 38, 21 for 59-yard games from Kareem Hunt. But Kareem Hunt, workhorse back, was of course not the plan going into last season for Kansas City. Pacheco played the first 2 games of the season, put up 2 solid fantasy stat lines, then essentially missed the bulk of the regular season before returning and never really looking like his old self. Andy Reid even said, after Pacheco came back, that most guys would not have returned from that injury in the same season. Keep in mind, this is a player we were drafting in the 2nd round last season. You felt great if you got him in the early 3rd round. Now, the price has fallen to a point where I'm back in. Right now in the NFFC, Pacheco's going off the board around pick 82 overall. That makes him the RB 29. And yet no one is clamoring to draft another Chiefs running back. Kareem Hunt is going outside the top 200. He's back with the Chiefs, but is anybody excited about 30-year-old Kareem Hunt who has 0 explosion? So there's a disconnect here, at least in my mind. Maybe we're skeptical of Isiah Pacheco coming off the injury. Maybe we're skeptical of the Chiefs offense overall, but we're clearly not confident enough in any other back on this roster to zag away from Pacheco. The bottom line is, I think this is a really affordable price for a guy who projects as the RB1 in what I expect at least to be a much better offense this season. There's no doubt it's been a very weird 2 years for the Chiefs. Scoring is down. Mahomes doesn't look like himself. But the Chiefs are still winning games. They're still generating plenty of red zone possessions. And I think having a healthy Rashee Rice alongside Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, that's going to go a long way toward reopening up this offense overall. So I'm on board with the idea that Pacheco may not have sky-high upside, certainly not at the level that we were drafting him a year ago, but the price is so affordable right now that I have no choice but to be in. I mean, look at what Pacheco did 2 seasons ago, 2023. 935 yards, 7 touchdowns, 44 catches, 244 yards, 2 receiving touchdowns in just 14 games. That placed him as the RB 15 on the season. Even if we knock that stat line down a bit, a finish as, say, the RB 20 would still mean he's gaining about 2 rounds of value based on his current ADP. So I am in on Isiah Pacheco at his current cost. All right, next running back on our list, we're going to Minnesota. I'm going to talk about Jordan Mason. Now, much like Jaylen Wright, Mason is a clear backup, but unlike Jaylen Wright, he's the clear backup to an aging running back in Aaron Jones, who's going to turn 31 in the middle of this season. Look, I love Aaron Jones, but the knock on him, even during his peak days in Green Bay when they were competing for Super Bowls, is he's always banged up. He's actually missed fewer games than you might expect throughout his career, but he has a lengthy injury history, did miss 6 games in 2023 before signing on with the Vikings last summer. Jones' 17 games last season to me feels like the absolute best case scenario. If we're being honest, I'm not sure I would bet on that being the case again in 2025. In fact, I would actively bet against that being the case this season. Even in a full 17 games, Jones still only produced 7 total touchdowns, just 5 touchdowns on the ground. He converted 24 carries inside the 10-yard line into just 3 touchdowns. It was an issue all season long for Minnesota. The Vikings have already indicated publicly that Mason will likely take over a decent share of the goal line work. Kevin O'Connell even went as far as to refer to the backfield as a 1A, 1B structure. Part of that, of course, is preserving Aaron Jones, but the implication is that this will be more of a timeshare than last season when Jones, out-carried Cam Akers and Ty Chandler by nearly 200 carries apiece. So with Mason, you're getting a guy who could still provide lower-end weekly value with the upside for much more in the event that Aaron Jones ends up missing time at some point, which I think he will. And let's keep in mind one other thing. Jordan Mason is simply a very good running back. He's not just some random backup who would be in line for more workload if there's an injury. He generates yards after contact. He forces missed tackles. He ranked 3rd among qualified running backs last season in rushing yards over expected per attempt. His ADP's been on the rise these last few weeks, but I think he's still plenty affordable at 124 overall, RB 39 over at the NFFC. To me, he should be closer to Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren, Zach Charbonnet. These are all guys who go a round and a half, even 2 rounds ahead of him. All right, let's finish out with one more sleeper running back. our one and only rookie on the list, Jaydon Blue of the Dallas Cowboys, where I am hoping and praying that Jaydon Blue, the 5th-round rookie out of Texas, can grab hold of this backfield to save us from what would be just an ultra-depressing Javonte Williams-Miles Sanders duo. Now, there is some level of intrigue with Williams. I'll admit that. He's technically atop the depth chart. He's still only 25. Obviously had a strong pedigree at one point as a second-round pick in 2021 coming out of UNC, but never followed through on that promise during his time in Denver. Clearly fell out of favor midway through last season and really didn't do much over the final 8 or 9 games. It's all about opportunity right now in Dallas, and Williams might get the first crack, but I think the Cowboys need some more big play ability at that position, and that's where Jaydon Blue comes in. I mean, might not have the same size or the between the tackles ability of a Javonte Williams, but he's a completely different style of a running back who showed plenty of upside as a pass catcher last season at Texas. Ran a 4.38 at the combine. That was second among running backs behind only Bashaw Tutin. If you're drafting right now, if you're doing best balls, it's all about speculation. Blue could be this season's Kamani Vidal. That's well in the realm of possibilities. You could end up being buried on the depth chart, but it's tough to get fired up about Javonte Williams right now. It's even tougher to get fired up about Miles Sanders. So I'm inclined to believe that at some point Blue is going to get his shot to have a piece of this Cowboys backfield, which ranked in the top half of the league, by the way, in 3 straight seasons in terms of rushing production prior to last year's debacle. Right now, Jaydon Blue's ADP is sitting in the 150s at the NFFC. We're talking same range as Tank Bigsby, Tajay Spears, Tutin, J.K. Dobbins, Isaac Arendo. You can talk me into some of those guys as upside plays if a starter goes down, but of that group, to me, Blue is the only one who I see having a clear, feasible path to a larger workload on a weekly basis that does not require an injury to a clear starter. So it might not happen right away. I would be surprised, if Dallas doesn't lean on the veterans early on. But again, if I'm hunting for upside later in a draft, I'm looking for somebody who can really explode this season, I don't mind taking a flyer on Jaydon Blue.